listener production.
Hey, Bension Siebert here with The Briefing. Is the app you're listening to this on right now artificially changing the kind of music that gets made in Australia? Alex Burnett has worked on no less than 30 songs that have made it onto Triple J's Hottest 100 over the years, collaborating with artists like Thelma Plum, Hockey Dad,
You can take away my greatest star.
Alison Wonderland, Sultan, Hayden James, Bliss and Eso, Flight Facilities, the list goes on. The Australian songwriter's music has racked up more than 1.4 billion streams on platforms like Apple Music and Spotify. On this morning's episode, we heard from the inventor of many of Spotify's algorithms to find out what they're doing to our taste in music. This afternoon, we're diving deep into what these algorithms are doing to the music that gets made in the first place. In the chat you're about to hear, Alex Burnett describes what it takes to make a song into a viral hit on these apps, and how these algorithms create incentives that might change the music that gets created in the first place. Alex Burnett, welcome to The Briefing.
Thank you very much for having me.
You have collected an impressive 1.4 billion streams across your songwriting catalogue. What, in your experience, makes a song go big on a platform like Spotify?
I think it comes down to the artist probably having something to say. I think it comes down to maybe a song having a cultural meme, and usually it's a snowball effect. So a lot of it is a great song with a great artist, and then a lot of it is luck, timing, the lap of the gods, the planets, black magic, whatever spirituality you believe in.
Sure. What are the incentives that the algorithms, Spotify and Apple Music and other streaming services use to recommend songs doing to the way you and other artists write music and make music?
I remember back in the day when CDs had extra length and bands like Metallica would make an album 79 minutes because that's how much a CD could hold. So recently in Spotify land, I feel like when it first came out, when you got on a particular playlist because you sounded like other songs, that would be a valuable thing to do. So I would go into sessions in London where someone was like, can you make it sound like chill road trip playlist? So my job was to kind of do that, but that doesn't make it necessarily special. It just meant that it streamed well, but it didn't stand out. So that was the initial first kind of gen version of Spotify. Then I feel like there was this new trend maybe 4 years ago where intros were very nondescript. So a couple of chords on a piano, whereby I felt like people were not wanting to be judged at all. And not just sort of like, it sounds like everything else, therefore please listen a bit longer. And now I feel like we're at a stage where stuff like TikTok has maybe influenced a sense of having bite-sized memorable moments. The same as Instagram, for instance, a 30-second snippet. But the issue with all that stuff is it doesn't make a great song. Because a great song has to be received and played on an acoustic or piano and be like memorable in its lyrics and its melody. I think occasionally you can get away with a bite-sized sort of chunk of something, but it sort of be the similar thing as making a movie with one big action scene and then expecting people to care. So yeah, it's an interesting time because I still think the fundamentals of what makes a great song is the same. I think it's a little bit more random about how it happens.
But if you can't necessarily, or it's hard to make what you might describe as a great song that also hits you right in the face in the first few seconds, then is the incentive to make less great songs?
Or make more? It's very hard because I think back in the day, an artist or a band would probably write and record an album every 2-3 years, and the other years they'd be on the road or finding themselves or falling out of love and in love to write the next thing. And I feel like now we've gone back to a 60s aesthetic of just putting out singles and seeing what happens. But again, I think that has its challenges, because if you just make a song and you just put it out and see what happens, if it doesn't do too well, that doesn't mean the song isn't great. It just maybe the timing wasn't right. And conversely, if you put it out and it does great, you got to somehow replicate it really quick. But the other truth, which is the most exciting and scary, is anything and everything is possible. So you could have a really short, 1:30 song that's a hit on TikTok, and you could also have a 7-minute beautiful piano arpeggio that sounds like Philip Glass, and they could both be hits. They don't need to be 3:30 and fit on radio formats and have American sounding singing.
In terms of the way that people experience music now, do you think that there's a good analogy to the way that social media works, in the sense that it puts people in smaller bubbles of things that they already like? What do you think is happening?
Oh, again, like such a huge question, because I think this modern era, if you have a cultural moment or a song that's considered a hit, I think it's a really big hit, because I think there's less medium range hits. So if we talk about, say, Charlie XCX with her Brat record and everything around that, or Sabrina Carpenter with Espresso and her latest song, Taste, they're massive, massive, big, big hits. But then if you would ask me what's sort of a song that's been bubbling around that people really like, I have no idea. There's heaps. Often the algorithm will play songs you already know and like. I don't maybe want to hear Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen. If I want to hear Bruce Springsteen, maybe another song off that record that I haven't listened to 400 times. But I guess the algorithm doesn't know. Like on Instagram, if you look at a snake on roller skates, suddenly then Instagram will give you 15 other snake videos. And you're like, that was just my one snake moment for my lifetime. Can you suggest other things? And then maybe Spotify will move into that area, or streaming services, whereby you can be a bit more instructive about what you're looking for, i.e., I love Bruce Springsteen type songs, but not by Bruce Springsteen.
You've spoken a lot about honesty in the way that you go about writing music and helping artists produce their music, and that's quite an important quality in whether or not it becomes a great song. Do you think that the incentives with having quick, hooky music that is easy to digest quickly, do you think it can diminish the honesty of the artwork itself?
Well, I think both. I think that the biggest currency now, I find, is an artist being unique in themselves, because with social media, we kind of want to know everything about them. So even if they're playing a character, like Bowie being Ziggy Stardust, if he was on social media, I feel like the uniqueness of that project from an artistic point of view and the honesty of the songs he probably created in that character is the same thing as what the artists that we love now are doing. And maybe back in the day and even now, songs that aren't honest can have moments of being hits, as in like, the Frog song, the Next Generation version of the Frog song, or a really naff Christmas song can still have a hit moment. But I reckon that we want real people and we want real stories. And I think that that's probably never going to change, because if a song's really great, but it doesn't come from an artist who's felt it or is relevant to their life, unless you're an amazing interpreter like Adele or Whitney Houston, I don't think it will be as powerful, because people will want to know the backstory of who was this person and what did they do? And, oh, you were dating them and then this happened, and, the sleuths on the internet and all that.
And finally, when you're listening on a streaming service, do you do anything deliberate to make sure that you're getting the best experience. What do you do?
What I was actually going to do this year is create a new person and have them full clean slate, no tastes. Because the issue I've got is it's got 10 years or 15 years of me listening to music for work. It's got me listening to music for fun, listening when I was DJing. And so all those three things are different ways of receiving music. So I would love to create a persona whereby it doesn't know anything about me and I go on this musical journey, Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe you might have to make a new email address for it or something like that. But I think it's possible.
True.
Well, Alex Burnett.
Be a good experiment.
Thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing. This has been a really fascinating conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.
Australian songwriter Alex Burnett there. That's it for this episode of The Briefing. Thanks for listening. We'd love it if you could share this ep with someone you think might enjoy it. If you want to keep up with our other content, you can always check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast and on TikTok and YouTube. Just search Listener Newsroom. We'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning from 6. I'm Ben Sion Siebert. Catch you next time.